Hi, I'm Claire, and for the case study project, I researched population control in China. I focused on how the increasing population has environmental and social benefits, along with what did and didn't work in policies created by countries around the globe. A key piece of terminology is carrying capacity, which we learned about in class, but nonetheless, the dictionary definition is, quote, the number or quantity of people or things that can be conveyed or held by a vehicle or container. In our case, the vehicle or container is planet Earth. The term population growth has only developed into overpopulation in recent years with the realization that we're depleting the planet's resources at a rate faster than they can be replaced. With the increase in population size comes an increase in demand because we must provide for new consumers. The problem is that our resources aren't increasing at the same rate, and therefore supply won't be able to meet demand, relating back to the tidbit on carrying capacity. A little fun fact found by the UNEP Global Environment Outlook is that each person on Earth now requires a third more land to supply his or her needs than the planet can supply, meaning we need to find a more sustainable way of living, and preferably sooner rather than later. So how'd this become a problem? One of the main groups of contributors to population growth are those who live in poverty. This is because they live in less developed countries who lack access to basic needs. Basic needs in this case being contraceptives. Less developed countries experience a greater amount of unwanted or unexpected pregnancies, but because they lack the necessities to deal with these instances, that only leaves one option. Even if fertility rates were to magically become zero right now, the world would still be in a bad place. Supply and demand ratios are only getting worse as 10 to 20 million people alone die of starvation each year, while on the other hand, 70 million people are added to the global population count annually. I already went a bit over population growth's impact on the environment in previous slides, but anyways, this has to do with environmental degradation. Not only are we depleting Earth's resources, which in our case are mainly non-renewable, but burning these fossil fuels has an immediate negative impact on the atmosphere. If we were to transfer our energy resources to renewable ones, there's still pros and cons regarding those. We learned an example of this during the hydropower unit. It would also be costly to convert the entire system. The other aspect I researched was a social one regarding poverty, like I mentioned earlier. There's also ethics involved when it comes to this topic, like whether government even has the power to control if and when people can have children, as well as the whole debate on abortion. There's also cultural differences that make it difficult. Some countries take pride in how many children they have. To clarify, the more the better, while others put children to work at an early age and therefore have their own reasons to produce at higher rates. My thesis statement is that instead of focusing our attention on preventing childbirth, policies should instead support women and their families by other means. To clarify, these could be through education, contraceptive availability, and health and family programs. It's been found that education, especially for women, helps fertility rates because it gives them other priorities in life other than to be a mother. I already mentioned why contraceptive availability is important. And lastly, health and family planning would support families instead of leaving them high and dry to deal with the situation alone. One example that demonstrates why controlling childbirths is bad is the result of China's one-child policy, which I'm pretty sure everyone's heard of. The policy was implemented in 1980 and abolished in 2016 when it was adapted to allow families to have 2 children under certain conditions. This policy was effective because it's one of the best examples to date of how a country decreased their population count. The problem is that the policy was rushed and was released with imperfections. The issue they're dealing with today is a decreasing population with an increasing age, which doesn't bode well when you consider the workforce. They're in an economic disaster and need a baby boom to counter it. We learned about the human population during week 6. The October 5th lecture in particular goes over the environmental impacts of population growth and historical patterns from different countries and charts that represent them. Lastly, the class lecture went over common components that are involved with population control policies. I use this information when thinking of my own conclusion, which was supported by other sources and examples as well. Overpopulation is a wicked problem because there's no easy solution. As we saw, controlling fertility rates can backfire, While it may work at first, there could be catastrophic consequences later. It would be best to attack the problem at the source, which would be in less developed countries, and provide them with the resources that they lack. With government commitment to the issue, it's possible to create a higher standard of living, which was China's original goal, to decrease the population size to create a higher standard of living for their citizens. And that's all. Thanks for listening.